I'm joined by our foreign affairs editor, Philip Turle. Hello to you, Philip. Just take us through what these protests are calling for as to the end of the country's transition government.
Okay, let's do a little bit of a historical recap, shall we, on the situation in Sudan for those who haven't been following it as closely as some of us. Remember that there was a president called Omar al-Bashir who ruled the country for 30 years up until 2019. He was hotly contested, and eventually, after pro-democracy protesters took to the streets, the military in Sudan decided it was time to oust Omar al-Bashir. So that meant that both sides came together afterwards to draw up the idea of a transitional government which was headed by both the military and the civilians together. And that is what has happened. So you have the military, which is in the hands of Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, and then you have the Prime Minister, who is a civilian, who is Abdallah Hamdok, who took up office in August 2019. So the two sides are working together towards a transitional period in Sudan towards elections which are due to be celebrated or held at the latest in 2023. So on paper, it all looks like the country is moving forward. But on the ground, there is a growing split between those who support the military and those who support the civilians. And that is what we saw yesterday with these marches taking place in Khartoum, the capital, and elsewhere around the country. Thousands of people turning out to support the civilian prime minister and the move towards a pro-democracy civilian country. At the same time, you have other protesters who, as you said, are supporting the military. They're camped out outside the presidential palace. The reason is that there is a difference of opinion on the way that Sudan is being managed. Those who support the military say the only way forward is for the military to come in, to take control of everything and to make sure that the democratic process is assured. Those who support the civilians say, well, the civilian government is the pro-democracy government, and that is what we want to continue in Sudan. That is why it's very important that they are allowed to push on with their reforms of the country and to get international aid in and to rebuild Sudan after all these years under the tenureship of Omar al-Bashir. So we have separate protests from two different movements, but they have a lot in common as well, that they all wanted Omar al-Bashir to fall, and they're all part of the pro-democracy transitional movement in the country.
Yeah, but Philip, as you point out, a lot of tensions, a growing split. So we thought maybe there would be scuffles on the ground, but both camps seem to avoid each other. Was that just coincidence?
Well, no, it's not a coincidence. And I think that if push comes to shove, then neither side really wants trouble. So these protests are organised so the protesters don't actually meet with each other. You have protests down one street and you have the other protests down another street. What both sides don't want is for this to descend into riots in the streets with protesters hitting and shooting each other. So each side has got their own specific area where they protest in, but they're not meeting together. Why is that? Because neither side, neither the civilians nor the military, want to return to the situation in Sudan, which was that of Omar al-Bashir. And that has been underlined by a failed coup d'etat earlier this year in which former sympathisers of Omar al-Bashir tried to regain power, and that was thwarted by the military. So the military doesn't want to return to that regime, and neither do the civilians. So they're quite careful about the fact that they're keeping this separate. And there is another important reason, is that if the military did take power in Sudan, then that would automatically mean an end to any prospect of international aid. And just to give you one figure, William, that is from the European Union, which has allocated 52 million euros to humanitarian aid in Sudan, and they certainly don't want to lose that money.
All right, Philip, thank you very much. Philip Turle, our international affairs editor.